Howdy, first grade authors. Welcome to the powerful video about making your sentences more powerful by combining ideas. So our goal is to become more powerful writers by adding details to our sentences, revising by combining ideas. So the reason that we're spending a lot of time on this is because, first of all, sentences are the building block of your stories. And the more powerful your sentences are, the more powerful your stories will be. So we've talked about strategies for making your sentences more powerful, like adding adjectives. And then the last couple months we've been talking about adding keywords like because or but or so. We've also practiced adding fragments that begin with before, after, if, when, even though, although, since, while, and unless. And you also have practiced using appositives. So in this video, I'm going to explain some strategies for combining 2 or 3 sentences. I'm going to model it for you and then explain the directions that I'd like you to follow on your own. I know that this is fairly challenging, but you should be proud that you can do this. And the more you do this, the easier and more natural it will become. So that's why we're doing this. All right. So I have put together some tips or hopefully helpful hints for sentence combining. And these are also written out in the lesson plan that your family is looking at today. So tip number 1 says, when you're trying to combine ideas, you can combine 2 or 3 ideas. So I have been giving you 3 similar ideas that are all kind of about the same general topic. You do not always have to combine all 3. Sometimes it makes more sense just to combine 2. So if that's the way you decide to make your sentence more powerful, that's great. Just make it a really powerful sentence combining 2 ideas, okay? So the point is, don't get too bogged down trying to combine 3 ideas. If you can combine 3 ideas, that's great. But if you can't, then combine 2 of them, okay? Number 2, and this is probably the most important one, and this is where the most thinking has to happen. And that's kind of the hardest part about writing, is the thinking you have to do before you actually start writing. So the thinking that we have to do in this exercise is to think about how the ideas in the sentences are related. You know, what's the connection? So these are some types of relationships between the sentences. Sometimes a sentence will be a cause and effect sentence, where a relationship will be a cause and effect relationship, where one sentence, the thing in one sentence causes the thing in another sentence to happen. So if that's what happens, then you're going to want to use keywords like because or since, maybe when. Sometimes that happens in cause and effect relationships, okay? Sometimes if can be a cause and effect relationship word. Some relationships are opposites. In other words, the thing going on in one sentence might be the opposite of the thing going on in another sentence. For example, if I had a sentence about something that was black, like one picture was black and the other is white, well, those are opposites. So then if you're talking about ideas that are opposite, then you might use but, or although, or even though. You might even use while. Okay? If the relationship between the sentences are things that happen at the same time, that could also be a while. That could be a when type of situation. And then sometimes things are in time order where one thing happens and then another thing. So things in one sentence happen and then in another. So if it's time order, first, second, third, something happens first and then it happens second, well, you might use before in your power sentence, or you might use after. All right, so this is a lot of words. I'm going to actually get to showing you some examples in a minute, but I just wanted to show you the third point, which is sometimes it's okay to just put the word and or between ideas to combine them. So that's fine. So let's see how this works. We're going to read the three sentences and then try to figure out how are they related to each other. Okay, so let's read. The first sentence is the effect. So these sentences are about things we've been studying at school, because I'm thinking that if you've been studying them, then you'll be able to figure out the relationship between them. So it says the effect is what happens in a story. The cause is why something happens in a story. Cause and effect relationships are important parts of stories. So we've been talking a lot about cause and effect relationships. And all three of these sentences are about cause and effect relationships. So how are these related? Well, this sentence tells what this is, right? So, because the effect is what happens in the story. This sentence tells what this is. So whenever you have ideas that define or tell what something is, that's a great time to use appositives, because that's what appositives do. Appositives define what things are. So, for example, we could say this is going to be our main sentence that we're going to make more powerful by adding appositives here. So, for example, cause, you could say cause, which is why something happens, and effect, which is what happens, are important parts of stories. Or you could say, cause and effect relationships are important parts of stories since the effect is what happens in a story and the cause is why something happens in a story. You could use the word since. But I think I'm going to try to do an appositive here, okay, where we say that cause and effect relationships are important parts of stories, and we're just going to add definition. Now, when you do that, you don't have to use all the words. You don't even have to use the same words. You just have to use the ideas to try to pick words that are going to make the sentence flow smoothly. Okay? By the way, you could say cause and effect relationships, comma, that tell what happens, and why it happens are important parts of stories. You could do that. cause and effect relationships that tell what happens and why it happens are important parts of the story. So let's see how this works. I think that sounds the best. So I'm going to start out with these 4 words, and I'm going to start with a capital. So cause and effect relationships. And I'm just copying that right off of a paper. Sorry, my pencil broke. Cause and effect relationships. And then I'm going to do my positive, so I got to put a comma there. Okay, and then I'm going to retell this in my own words. I'm not going to use the exact wording here. So I'm going to say cause and effect relationships. A lot of times for an appositive, it's good to use the word which. Which tell what happens and why it happens, comma, are important parts of stories. So I'm going to say, let's start over here. Which tell what happens and why it happens, comma. Remember to put your comma before the appositive and then after the appositive. And then I can just finish. Are important parts of stories. Are important parts of stories. Period. Okay, so now one of the important things here is I didn't use all of these words. I just used some of the words and then I added some of my own to make it make sense. So I took what happens and why it happens, and I added like this word tell. I said, and this word which. I said which tell what happens and why it happens. So I just took the important parts of those ideas and added them to my own words to make the sentence make sense and flow smoothly. Okay? So by figuring out that these 2 sentences told what parts of the 3rd sentence meant, I figured out I could use an appositive. Let's try another one. These ideas are about poems, since we've been learning about poems. It says, many poems have rhyming words. Many poems become songs. Many poems become prayers. So all 3 of these sentences are about poems. So what's the relationship, right? Is it cause and effect? Does the fact that poems have rhyming words help them become songs and prayers? Well, it does, because it makes them flow. So you could use a cause and effect word, like you could use because. You could use since. You could use so. Okay. I hadn't, to be honest with you, when I started talking to you about that, I wasn't going to do this, but now I'm thinking this could work. I was going to talk about these as appositives. You could say many poems, comma, which have rhyming words, comma, become songs and prayers. You could do that. That's kind of doing appositives and adding the word and. You could say many poems become songs and prayers because they have rhyming words. You could say, since poems have rhyming words, many become songs and prayers. You could do that. You could use, sometimes these things happen at the same time. You could use a word like when, right? You could say when poems have rhyming words, they become songs and prayers. You could say, even though poems have rhyming words, they become songs and prayers. There's lots of ways you can do this. You could use time order words like before or after, right? You could say, after poems add rhyming words, they become songs and prayers. You just got to change some of the words around. I think what I'm going to do is just do a cause-effect type. And I'm going to say, well, I could say many poems become songs and prayers because they have rhyming words. But I'm going to do it, I'm going to use the word since. I'm going to say since, and then I'm going to just use this whole thing. The first sentence, since many poems have rhyming words, comma, and since I already said many poems here, I'm not going to use the same words because we don't want to repeat words too much. I'm going to substitute the word they. And so again, you don't have to use every single word. Pick words that make it flow and make sense. So I'm just going to use they. Keep breaking my pencil lead. They become songs and prayers. There you go again. Okay. Now, because I want to not have this video go too long, I'm going to pause in terms of giving you the examples. And now I'm going to walk you through the directions for the sheet that you're going to be working on. So this is the sheet that your family will hopefully print out or at least click on so you can look at it. All the words are up here that you might want to use. And then in your lesson plan is all the hints about the types of relationships as well as other ways to combine sentences. So you can combine 3 ideas or 2 ideas. Here's all the key words to use if you think it's a cause and effect situation or an opposites or a dependence or a same time. I'll add in that if one sentence tells what another sentence means, you can use appositives. I'll put that in there before you get this, okay? And it's okay to use and or sometimes and just combine ideas like that. All right, so here you go. You're going to write your name and number at the top of the paper. The first, number 1, the sun is our star. Light is the fastest form of energy in the universe. Light takes 8 minutes to travel from the sun to Earth. So think, how are these related? Well, the second and third sentence are about light. The first sentence is about the sun, and the only other place the sun comes up is right here. So it's like this tells what the sun is. And what do we do when we have a sentence that tells what something is? We use an appositive. So you could say light and this sentence tells what light is. You could have two appositives. You could say light, comma, the fastest form of energy in the universe, comma, takes 8 minutes to travel from the sun, comma, our star, comma, to Earth. You could do something like that. Or you could do cause and effect, right? So since light is the fastest form of energy in the universe, it only takes 8 minutes to travel from the sun to the Earth. All right, I'm gonna not try to give you too many answers. I'm just gonna quickly show you the second group of ideas. A shadow occurs when an object blocks light. A shadow moves when the object blocking light moves. A shadow also moves when the sun moves. Okay, so these two sentences talk about when shadows move. This sentence defines what a shadow is. So how can you combine those? Number 3, halves and fourths are two types of fractions. Halves occur when we divide a shape into 2 equal parts. Fourths occur when we divide a shape into 4 equal parts. So what is the relationship? The first sentence talks about halves and fourths. The second sentence tells what halves are. The third sentence tells what fourths are. So maybe you could do in a positive there. Maybe you could, halves and fourths are they're not the same. They're different. Maybe you could do a relationship that shows they're different, how they're different. All right. So good luck. Remember to put capitals at the beginning of your sentence, end marks at the end. When you're done, please have somebody from your family send me a picture of your very powerful sentences. I cannot wait to see them. Thank you for your effort, stamina, and perseverance. You're getting to be better and better writers every day, and I'm very proud of you. Thank you. Bye.